I'm home.
Throws to the near side, and that's intercepted. Intercepted by Jack Jones, heading down the near sideline, and this will be a pick six for Jack Jones and a touchdown for Arizona State.
People here, when you think of Sun Devil football, you think of Sun Devil for life.
Here we go, 7 seconds. Berkovici. He's just going to air it out deep downfield, and no white shirts around. Oh, Jalen Strong! Caught for a touchdown! Jalen Strong makes the catch!
I went to Arizona State. Right. I'm a Sun Devil, man.
This is about the Valley. We need the Valley. If we get the Valley all in, the sky is the limit.
Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
The portal can take, the portal can give, and finally the portal can lead you back home.
Man, I tell you, we did an episode last week. We're trying to think of, man, what are we really going to talk about? Because that signing day is a couple weeks out, and that isn't really going to be anything too huge. We might be at a lack of content, we feared. Oh, how wrong we were. In 1 week's time, ASU has rattled off a series of incoming in-state transfers that we'll certainly talk about, and there's other things to discuss as well. The coaching staff is finalized. ASU, as you mentioned, the portal giveth and the portal taketh away. So there are more names from the Sun Devil program that, since we last all spoke, have joined that transfer portal list. So a lack of content there is not.
There's no such thing as an off-season in the college football calendar anymore. Yeah, just absolute flurry of activity. There was one afternoon where after a couple of local guys decided to come back home and commit to their Sun Devils, kind of almost sarcastically said, yeah, this tweet will probably be outdated in 10 minutes. And lo and behold, it was, because a couple more. So we will break all that down. Plus, we're going to talk about all these guys coming back home, the staff that's now assembled, and ASU's kind of efforts and outlooks and strategies as they try to kind of put that proverbial fence up around the state of Arizona with the one, the only, the legend who has more dialed in to the local scene than anybody else out there, the legend himself, Chili. And then also we're going to talk to one of those guys who played at the high school level in Arizona, started at Chandler High School under Sean Aguano at the time, went off to play some football for Cal, but is now going to come back to Tempe and play a little bit of running back. DeCarlos Brooks will join us later. But before we dive into all these delicious topics, Joe, let's take a bite out of some news.
Yeah, we got a smorgasbord of news to discuss here. That's pretty much the main focus of this episode. And, man, if you want to chomp into something amazing, get yourself a meal of food at DeCarlos Deli, 2334 North Scottsdale Road. I've made a visit myself last week. Man, I'm rolling with that beef and sausage sandwich with the little add-ons here. I posted a picture of it on the Twitter. That's kind of become my go-to here, I think, for the cold months. I think I got like a seasonal type of, preference when it comes to DeFalco's. I also got a little pasta. That's kind of that's not usually my go-to there for literally no reason, just because the sandwiches are so killer. But got a little penne with some vodka sauce. I learned that the vodka sauce is not vodka like Tito's vodka or something like that. You don't catch a little buzz off it, but you do catch a buzz of deliciousness that you can only get from DeCarlos Deli at 2334 North Scottsdale Road. And of course, as always, you can check out their menu online at DeCarlosDeli.com.
Yeah, your tweet actually caused me to call an audible the other day, and so I saw that deliciousness pop on the timeline. So I changed my dinner plans and did that exact same thing, because I just like you, an El Parista devotee, and I'm trying to change things up. Went with the beef cheesesteak a couple trips ago. Tried the sausage and beef, and with the add-ons. And, oh man, just absolute can't miss stuff. So who else can't miss? Recently is the ASU hoops team after a kind of as has kind of become par for the course, basically. It's kind of an uneven game, though, even though they might have a big lead or might fall behind early in the games in the first half. These Sun Devils just don't quit. Their relentless defense always keeps them in games, and they just continue to pile win after win. Joe, don't look now. The Bobby Hurley team, 10-1 on this young season.
Yeah, it may come as a surprise to some folks, but this is one of the best starts that ASU has had in its history as a member of the Pac-10 or Pac-12 conference. There have only been four. This is only the fourth occasion that ASU has 10 wins within the first 11 games since it entered the Pac-10 conference in 1978. Those are, in addition to this year, you have that Guard U season of 2017 and 18, 2008-2009, which was James Harden's second year, and ASU made an NCAA tournament appearance that year. And then 2004-2005, I believe Ike Diagu was on the team among some others in that time as well. So, I mean, that's it. I mean, you had some great teams that ASU had, the Sweet 16 team in 94-95 with Mario Bennett, the Byron Scott, Fat Lever days in the early 80s, but even those didn't have starts like this. I think, as memorable as that Michigan win was a couple of weeks ago, maybe because you don't have like a Kansas or that sort of major marquee victory like the 2017 and 18 team had, but I think some folks, might kind of be not necessarily as aware as they should be that this is an ASU team that is for real. They're doing it differently than has been the case in recent years when ASU's had some runs, whether in Pac-12 play or in non-conference play, as we've seen a couple times in the last handful of years. This team plays some major defense. They are a problem defensively. They've got different guys that can score. It's not necessarily just one guy that if he happens to be off that night that their offense is way off track. It's an exciting team to watch, and very, very likely, as long as things keep trending this direction, you should see them in the top 25. I think I've said that, or at least certainly thought it on many occasions the last couple of weeks, but as things are trending, ASU with this win over Creighton, and they play San Diego coming up here this Sunday, you get some wins going on, and you should have a top 25 team. You only got 2 games, I believe, standing in the way between that New Year's Eve afternoon showdown in Tempe against that team down south, which, again, as long as things continue to trend positively for ASU, could very well be a matchup of 2 nationally ranked teams. So what I'm saying is get on out to Desert Financial Arena this weekend. Keep an eye on the Sun Devil basketball team because they're a fun squad to watch, and they're winning ball games. That's a good combination.
Yeah, it's just fun to see them kind of be so relentless on the defensive side of the ball. I believe in most of the metrics and advanced stats, they are one of the best defensive teams in the country. And so that can help when you play that good of defense and that relentless of effort. I mean, you are going to be able to kind of withstand some cold shooting spells, which I believe they started off pretty cold against Creighton, and they were still able to kind of, withstand some runs and some blows that the Blue Jays were going to throw at them and ultimately get that win. But as you mentioned, of course, they're coming up against San Diego on Sunday, and then a road trip to San Francisco on Wednesday, and then a little bit of Christmas break before that New Year's Eve showdown against U of A. So, and I believe at one point Andy Katz, one of the prominent bracketologists, had ASU a 6th seed in some early projections. So this is an exciting time for ASU basketball, and of course, doing it all without Marcus Bagley. So this is a team that seems to be well put together. They're good size, good effective shooting on the wings. Frankie Collins has been a revelation in the backcourt as well, kind of running the show. But yeah, even if some of those key guys are having an off night, just the overall depth is something to really behold, and it's something we really haven't seen for a while in Tempe.
Yeah, you talked about Collins. I mean, he missed a little bit of time due to illness, and then against Creighton just had an off night offensively, but that didn't deter the team from having success. And you talked about this drama that's going on with Marcus Bagley, and the educated opinion and even the simplest opinion is probably telling you that you aren't going to see him play a game of basketball for Arizona State ever again. That's just a guess, but it seems like a very logically educated one. But the Sun Devils, they're rolling, they're doing their thing, even against Creighton, where you had a double-digit first half lead, things seemed to be rolling, and then Creighton chipped away at it, got it down to single digits going into locker rooms, and then they just came out on fire and built up a double-digit lead of their own in the second half. In a lot of situations, and even Sun Devil teams of the relatively recent past, that could have gotten very far away from them. But ASU was just able to withstand the damage as they do. They don't lose their cool, don't lose their composure. They play defense, hit some really clutch shots, and get things done. It's kind of what enabled them to get that victory they got on the road against Colorado and others that have happened over the course of the season. So this is it's a different caliber of team than what we saw in some of the successful teams that Bobby Hurley has had at ASU, and that's not a knock against them. It's one that just seems to be very, very cohesive, and not a lot of selfishness, and just this chemistry that they have, which is pretty remarkable given the fact that so many of the key players are first year players at ASU that came in transferring from elsewhere, but were established in what they did, like the Cambridges, Warren Washington, Frankie Collins. So for them to be able to come together so quickly and have this run and have only that one blemish on their record, which as frustrating as it is, and I've said this over and over again, I feel like that Texas Southern loss created a great deal of good. It was a wake-up call, and this program just has not looked back since that defeat. So, like I said, it's something worth supporting. Get on out there, whether there's a top 25 number by their name or not. Get on out there Sunday, and then obviously the next time they'll be back that following Sunday, New Year's Eve afternoon. Got to pack the place because that is going to be a banger there when those Wildcats come to town, because the Devils should be ready for that.
Perhaps the best thing about the Sun Devil winning streak, other than just winning is good, is that it keeps alive the Kyle Dodd victory stash. Well, I know that he was trying to just grow it out in November and all that stuff, but he just kind of you never mess with the winning streak, and so even despite Doug Tamro taking some shots at it, the stash is alive and well as the Sun Devils continue to pile win on win. All right, so transitioning back to football a little bit, some good news on the personnel front. This is something that was kind of expected, but it was finally made official. Tight end Jalen Conyers is back.
Yeah, that's huge. You look at what he did just in that final stretch of the season since Sean Aguano took control of the offense. And, it wasn't just that Colorado game, although that was obviously a major breakout game for him. He just became such a reliable receiver and a playmaker and a threat after the catch. The full total package at tight end that ASU hasn't seen, my goodness, in a very, very long time, with what he brings in his pass catching ability and his athleticism, and he's got years ahead of him. He certainly could have made the decision to relocate. Of course, he already did that once coming in from Oklahoma, but it's great to see him return. Great to see that attitude that he has. It's one of those things like. Everybody reads so much into things that are, said on social media, if it's even remotely cryptic. And I think he said something about, the day before he announced his return, that he had a big announcement coming for the next day. And my thought process is that you usually don't telegraph an announcement that you're going to transfer. You know what I mean? Usually if you're going to kind of create that sort of setup, typically good news, at least for those who want you to return. So I was optimistic, and then obviously there was a lot of, I think, Kenny Dillingham was having some fun with it.
Yeah, he quote-tweeted with kind of the nervous sweating emoji.
Or a tear or something like that. Yeah, it was something where he's kind of playing along to where, they kind of gave it away in a fun way. But obviously the end result is good because, man, yeah, did he become a playmaker. And, this is a team that's going to need him moving forward. And if he can put together a full season like he did in that last 5-game stretch or so, you're going to be looking at a guy that's, putting up some major numbers and setting himself up for a big-time future playing football. We'll
dive into the portal additions and such, and how certain position groups are stacking up at this early stage of the transfer portal season. But you got to feel pretty good about the pass catcher situation with Conyers back. We talked about last week that fellow tight end Messiah Swinson, his 6'8" frame, also coming back. You're returning Gio Sanders, your number 2 pass catcher, and of course, an emerging, I believe, all conference caliber wide receiver in Elijah Badger as well. Jacob Newell was a tight end that this staff was raving about, or the previous staff was absolutely raving about, but unfortunately suffered a season-ending injury in fall camp. He'll hopefully be back to full strength. Just there should be no shortage of options, and of course they'll be looking to make some more portal additions in addition to the one they've already made so far. So yeah, that's one area that's looking pretty good right now. And of course, as we record this, we are about a week away from the traditional, or I should say rather the early signing period. ASU, the last couple classes, of course, have been more portal heavy rather than relying on the traditional high school signees, but there's still some 2023 commits that we should talk about. And one, this is ASU got back in the fold after defensive lineman Cullen Fight, a 3-star lineman out of Texas, remained committed, then decommitted kind of amidst the coaching uncertainty. But after talking with ASU's new defensive staff, which is now in place, he has recommitted once again.
Yeah, and he made no bones about the fact that ASU is where he wanted to be. Just maybe had to reassess the situation, get to know the coaching staff. So you can't discredit him for any of that. He's someone that a lot of folks hope he kind of has that Will Sutton type of thing to him, to where he doesn't have massive height and that sort of thing for the position, but just seems like a dog in there. And if you look at some of his other offers, a lot of them are coming from some of those programs that are having a great deal of success right now. Even if they're not traditional powers. You look at the teams like Oregon State, UTSA, Tulane, that sort of thing. And I know that a lot of Sun Devil fans are probably going to say, okay, well, you don't maybe want to be in recruiting battles with those programs for every single player that you go after, but those are programs that are having a great deal of success. So at least they have an eye for talent. So there's something to be said about that. And for ASU on the defensive line, you need to get talent, but you also need to get bodies, because there are a lot of departures, and it was a general position group that just was not an area of strength last year. So to get someone like that back on board, that's a positive thing.
A couple of decommits from the 2023 class to pass along. A 3-star linebacker out of California, R.L. Miller, announced his decommitment, and this is a name that we talked about on our last episode as an addition. He's now a subtraction. JUCO defensive back Adonis Forrest Jr., I believe he's one of those guys that had a good frame on him, but I believe 10 days was the duration of his commitment. So that pairs the total list of non-portal members of this 2023 class for ASU to 7, 5 of which are from Joe, your home state of Texas.
There you go, Texas forever, brother. There's always going to be some attrition when you get the coaching changes. There are going to be players that might want to go elsewhere on their own accord. There are, in many cases, I'd say in more cases, players that new coaches decide to move on from. Not saying what the outcome was with either of these two. When you look at Forrest and that short turnaround, that was certainly before Carrington was hired as coaching in the defensive backfield. I'm not sure if that was before Ward was hired as defensive coordinator. I know that Aaron Fletcher, the previous secondary coach, was integral in the recruitment and commitment of Forrest. So I think it would make a lot of sense that there was just something within the crossover of the departure of the old staff, even though his commitment was after Kenny Dillingham was hired. Just something with that, changing of the guard that affected his recruitment by Arizona State. So, yeah, as you mentioned, a relatively small list, or, a small list in any context as far as the high school commits are concerned, but that's something that we could very well see some changes over not only the next week or so with the opening of the early signing period, but then heading into the February signing period, because we know these coaches are going hard and heavy after trying to flip a handful of in-state recruits and also doing recruiting out of the state as well. So the number that is, the quantity of high school commits that you see right now, I'm sure the staff certainly doesn't want that to be the final product. And
so as we talked about on our last episode, most of ASU's coaching staff under Kenny Dillingham was in place, and so I refer you all to our last episode to get our thoughts on most of those guys, but there was one spot remaining, and that was for tight ends coach, and it was kind of like perhaps the worst kept secret, or just something that was really kind of not a matter of if, but when. The addition of Jason Mons to the coaching staff, taking over ASU's tight ends. was official. And of course, the reason there was ASU was waiting for the Saguaro SaberCats playoff run to come to an end. They played for the Open Division State Championship, falling a little bit short to Basha. But right now, I mean, you look at Jason Mons. This is a name that's synonymous with elite Arizona high school football, and what he has been able to do during his 11 seasons at Saguaro. 7 state championships, 123-19 overall record. I mean, and as well as producing countless Division I football players and FBS caliber players. Of course, a lot of those SaberCats have done some pretty great things in the maroon and gold. He's a Sun Devil himself, as a member, along with me, as well as the ASU class of 2004. So Mons does complete the staff, and it's kind of like I mentioned, it's a matter of when, not if. So but it certainly now gives ASU kind of like a superstar core of local high school coaching legends to lead that recruiting effort.
Man, it's a big deal. He's very sought after, highly respected. A couple of the figures that you give in a lot of coaching contexts don't go together. Someone winning 7 state titles but having graduated college in 2004. Usually someone that's got that amount of state titles is probably in his 60s or 70s. So he's had a tremendous amount of success at what is a national power and a factory for not only Division I talent, but guys that are going off to the NFL. So, I mean, that is huge. Like you mentioned, kind of the worst kept secret. It's like that, present that's under the Christmas tree that is shaped like a bike, but it's inside wrapping paper, so you got to wait a couple weeks. Even though you know what it is, you got to wait till Christmas morning to open it up. Kind of one of those situations. Yet another ASU alum coming into the fold for this staff. Someone that's got a tremendous amount of relationships, of course, not only just in the state of Arizona, but across the country as well. I mean, you don't succeed at that level in that occupation without building a network that ranges beyond your state. So that's a big deal to get him on board and building things up and working ASU's way to recruit this state for this class, for this cycle of transfers, and then also beyond. It's no surprise that the first transfer off the board for ASU was a Saguaro alum, and that there is at least one, if not more, that are still out there that are highly favored to come to ASU in this transfer portal. So that is going to pay off quickly. It already really has, and the future is very, very bright in that regard, because you've got a young guy who's had a tremendous amount of success. Now, of course, he's making the leap to the college level, but that's something that someone like Sean Aguano did. Someone like John Wren did back in the day when he was in the later stages of his coaching career. Absolute legend in every capacity is John Wren. So a lot to be excited about with Jason Mons coming aboard at ASU, because it was really only a matter of time before he took a power conference assistant coaching gig. And I think ASU is very lucky and fortunate that he returned to his alma mater and stayed in his home area.
All right, so as mentioned, that completes the staff. So under Kenny Dillingham, a quick rundown. You have assistant head coach and special teams coordinator Charlie Regal, offensive coordinator Bo Baldwin, running backs coach Sean Aguano, wide receivers coach Rashad Samples. Of course, Jason Mons taking over at the tight ends. Saga Tuatele will be the offensive line coach once Fresno State's bowl game is over with. On the defensive side of the ball, you have Brian Ward as the defensive coordinator, defensive line coach Vince Amy, linebackers coach A.J. Cooper, and defensive backs coach Brian Carrington. Earlier this week, I put out a Twitter poll, just kind of trying to get a sense for what ASU fans feel about this coaching staff now that it is full in its entirety. Over the course of 849 votes, 51.6% love it. 30% say it's pretty good. Just a shade under 4% are not impressed, with 14% are in wait-and-see mode. Joe, what's your initial just kind of reaction now that from top to bottom this staff is complete?
I'm really excited about it, especially with some of the variety that they brought in. Bringing in guys like Samples and Carrington to supplement that Arizona-heavy focus is very important. Bringing in someone like Ward, who, he has his Arizona ties, but he's also an accomplished coordinator at this level in this conference from a program that at Washington State that, you figure you can get more star power to Arizona State. So if he was able to do what he did at Wazoo, think of what he can do down here in Tempe. So I think that, though the initial reaction by a lot of fans were, this is all Arizona people, they're going too heavily all in on Arizona. You're not going to move the needle just by focusing on Arizona. Not saying I agree or disagree with that, but for there to be some added variety, that's a big deal. You're seeing them bring in players through the transfer portal. You're hearing positive reactions. You've got a lot of energy, a lot of youth, but also some experience there as well. So, I think that, you don't have this gap like you had in the previous regime prior to the fallout of the NCAA allegations where, you had these few mid-20s in age recruiting stars, and then you had some coaches that were in a much different age bracket. You have people that are able to mesh at a different level but bring their experiences to the table, again, with versatility. I think that's something that's very impressive. We'll see how it pans out. I mean, with any coaching staff, it's always going to have a wait-and-see element to it, and this is no exception to that. But again, you got to love the energy. You got to love the enthusiasm. You got to love the fact that if they're going to lose out on recruits, especially in the state of Arizona, it's not going to be for a lack of trying. It's not going to be because they're the 15th or 18th or 20th offer, which has been the case in the past. It's just simply going to be because an athlete decides to go out of state. So I'm all for it. I'm on board. And like I said, this enthusiasm, it seems so genuine. You see a lot of guys in this line of work that, can go out and try to hit a home run on a press conference, but can't necessarily keep that same energy behind closed doors or keep that energy 24/7. And you just get the impression that these guys are for real in that regard. Again, we'll see what happens as things approach this early signing day, as the transfer portal continues, as the February signing day approaches, as the season comes along. There are going to be a lot of milestones that this coaching staff is going to reach here in these upcoming weeks and months, but so far so good to say the very least.
Yeah, it's an interesting group, and of course, it's hard to probably any coaching staff or any coaching hire. It's probably a couple years out before you can really kind of get any kind of grading element to it. But you got to like what they put together, especially the additions of Carrington and Samples in terms of giving you some dynamic, young, energetic recruiting chops. Guys who Samples was the youngest position coach in the NFL this past season at just age 27. He's coaching the LA Rams running backs. So that's pretty good there. And, of course, Carrington, a guy who since 2016 has signed 11 five-star recruits. Pretty good. I do still have concerns about California. Of course, that's always been ASU's historical hotbed of talent there. Saga Tuatele is a guy who has good connections in the Inland Empire, a lot of talent there. But we'll see how the things kind of pan out. And of course, there's the emphasis on Arizona and Arizona high school talent. And even if they're not able to get that high school talent the first time around, we've seen in the transfer portal, it's all about relationships. And these are guys that have some impressive track records from where they come from, but also some outstanding questions that we will get answered here in the coming months and a couple seasons. So overall, I think it's a good group. We'll see how they actually do when it starts to count. But so far, so good. And as about 82% of the people in this poll said they feel pretty good about where ASU staff is headed, at least initially. Just I think we'd be remiss on this day of recording if we did not make mention of the passing of one of the big names in the sport. Mike Leach, of course, unfortunately passed away at age 61 earlier today after suffering I believe it was a cardiac episode. This is a guy that, for better or worse, was always himself. And in a business that, we talk about coach speak a lot because there's a lot of coaches that say the same things in different ways and over. But Mike Leach was always unique, always authentic. That could be good or bad, but simply put, you just cannot tell the story of college football without Mike Leach. And his sudden passing, it certainly casts a dark shadow on the sports world and the landscape of college football. So just kind of it's a big loss to the Mississippi State community and to college football fans everywhere.
Yeah, it's a tragedy. It's a shame. Condolences out to his family and loved ones. It's hard to think of a greater personality in college football or college sports than what he brought for, the last several. I know he's a longtime coach, but he really kind of came into his own, in the last handful of years. And, as some will point out, of course, there are, reasons that people may not have favored him at all times, but that's something that you could put to the side at this point, man. Just a purely entertaining human being who just brought some of the most interesting and oddest and weirdest takes, and I'm all about the weird, so I love it, man. It's like pro wrestling come to life. That's what everything is in my life. You know what I mean? You got some good stories and storylines and heel turns and things coming out of nowhere, I guess you could say. But just always entertaining in the press conferences and in the sideline reports and all that stuff. And you hear all these stories and accounts that are being shared, through social media, and by and large, the vast majority of everything you're hearing, and almost everything you're hearing, is how he helped people out that were in media context, how he gave them way more than they even asked for in a very positive way, helped out to maybe some student or up and coming reporters. So that's something that you always love to see from a head coach, someone that doesn't necessarily have to go out of his way to help people in that capacity, and when he does. And I mean, just some legendary quotes. The one when he was evaluating the Pac-12 mascots. He starts with ASU, and he's basically, kind of without saying it, giving the Sun Devil the edge. He immediately kicks out the Wildcat, which that's just a winner across the board. But take some time, go through YouTube or Twitter or wherever, and just search for Mike Leach interview, best of, something like that. You're going to be entertained for hours. On top of that, just a hell of a coach. I mean, what he did at Texas Tech, what he did at Washington State, to be able to have that success there, turn them basically into a top 10 team, that's remarkable. He had Mississippi State rolling, so it's a major loss in every way, and someone that was a great coach, purely entertaining individual. So it's a big loss for the sport on and off the field. So it's again it's a huge loss, a tragic situation. Someone that was taken away far too young, but somebody that made a huge impact on the sport that he coached.
Yeah, it's a real shame. I mean, 61 is just far too young, and I mean, putting together I saw a stat today that he won 59.6% of his games, and the College Football Hall of Fame has, for coaches, a requirement to win 60%. Hopefully they round up, because, again, you cannot tell the story of college football, especially in the modern era, without Coach Leach. And putting that 59.6% win percentage together, coaching at Lubbock, Pullman, Starkville. I mean, that in itself, should give you the benefit of the doubt there. And of course, a multifaceted guy. And I think we talked about on the show last week of just the one running back who was transferred out of Mississippi State and just kind of put in his recruiting graphic about just that because Coach Leach thinks I'm soft. And so he, had some problematic things in terms of, you go back to the incident at Texas Tech that led to his dismissal. So, but, for better or worse, he was always himself. And that's something you could always appreciate, is just some authenticity. And whether it was just some insane, weird tangent in a press conference that was delightful, or the scores of stories that you've seen of how he helped folks in need, or just even some more of the problematic stuff. He's a multifaceted guy who is authentic, and that is something that is hard to find in this day and age. And again, this is going to be a significant loss, obviously for his family, for those who knew him, for the Mississippi State community, and for just the sports fans at large.
So before we jump into our incredible guest here today. Of course, we got to encourage every single one of you, if you're not already, to become subscribed members at devilsdigest.com. You can get incredible information on the transfer news that's running around every single day. Of course, this coaching staff is finalized, but you can learn all about them from that. Recruitment's going on, ASU sports in full gear. We certainly can't encourage enough that you become subscribed members in the huddle of devilsdigest.com. And our guy coming up is someone that contributes a lot to that. You know, Brad, in a lot of walks of life, people are known by just one word. You know, you got like Drake and Madonna, professional wrestling fans like myself. You got, Kane, you got Edge, guys like that. But in our lives, in this community, there's only one man that can hold the championship title of the one-word name. And we're talking about the guy who is dialed in, locked in to Arizona high school football and recruiting like just about nobody else is in this planet. Of course, we're talking about my man, Chili. Brother, welcome back. Been way too long.
What's going on, man? I appreciate this. I was wondering when I was going to get the second episode under my belt. I was worried that I made a bad rookie appearance, but Brad, Joe, I appreciate both of you guys. Thank you guys for having me on the show.
Absolutely, my friend. So now you're tapped into what's become this ASU coaching staff. You knew about some things before it really took shape. Now that it's here, the entire staff is assembled. What are your thoughts on Kenny Dillingham as head coach of Arizona State and the coaching staff he's put together at ASU?
I love it. This is what we needed. This is what we wanted, and this is what we needed. There's really only two directions to go. There was Kenny Dillingham or there was Deion Sanders, right? And while Deion Sanders is great, and I'm not going to say anything bad about the Hall of Famer, but, dude, Kenny Dillingham is an ASU lifer. He said it in his press conference. He has like 4 or 5 generations or whatever that went to ASU. It's just, this is cool. This is fun, and this is going to be exciting. And Kenny knows the NIL age. He knows how to deal with the kids. He's a video gamer, kind of, so to speak. This is going to be buckle up. We're ready for a ride. Buckle up.
So we've already seen some benefits there. The transfer portal opening up for business about a week or so ago. ASU, as of this recording right now, 7 publicly known FBS transfers. They're all Arizona high school products. There's an 8th that's reported to be on board as well, with even more possibly on the way. We're going to go through those one by one individually and talk about them. But before we do that, as a whole, have you been surprised at all that ASU's been able to claim so many so quickly? Did you figure it was just a foregone conclusion that with this staff they were going to gobble up a bunch of Arizona high school kids and bring them back home? Basically, overall, what are your reactions to this transfer haul that ASU has put together in this past week?
Hey, the Mount Rushmore of high school coaches in Arizona starts with Coach Iguano, Coach Regal, and Coach Monzanel. I am absolutely not surprised one bit to see some of the names that we're about to get into jump on this team through the portal. I think that this is going to be absolutely incredible, and we're going to have more. There's going to be more.
So let's get to talking about these transfers. Perhaps the most intriguing one is that 8th one I referred to in the previous question. He's reported to be on board. No sort of like official, so to speak, social media post, but that doesn't mean too much this day and age, I guess you could say. But Jake Smith, the National Gatorade Player of the Year out of Scottsdale's Notre Dame Prep, a top 50 overall recruit out of high school, has had a long journey in his college career, was productive when he began his first couple years at Texas, got hurt, transferred to USC due to injury issues, never played there, so he hasn't played in a college game since the 2020 season. So assuming he's all in to come to ASU, what will the Sun Devils be getting in Jake Smith?
An offensive weapon. The kid's a clean route runner. He's got some juice, provided that he's healthy, right? Because he did suffer an injury at Texas. And I think that they did him a little bit dirty in the recovery rehab process. I don't think he ever fully healed. So, barring with the time off that, he's gotten time to fully recuperate and stuff. I think that ASU fans should be super excited that Jake Smith is on board. I think that it's going to be fun to watch him in whatever capacity that he is on the offense. He's absolutely explosive and dynamic. He's just fun to watch. So watch out. Jake Smith is the truth. Just wait.
Now, quarterback Jacob Conover was one of the most accomplished and productive quarterbacks in state history, and now is coming back home with with eyes on winning the starting quarterback job. Do you think that he has has the kind of potential to be a good starting quarterback in the Pac-12? And how do you foresee the kind of that battle with Trenton Bourguet, another homegrown quarterback, shaping up?
Hey, look, Jacob Conover, 2019 kid, also just like Bourguet. I know that he went on his mission, I think, for a year, if I remember correctly, threw 10,000 yards in high school. I watched his first game against Corona Centennial, I believe, and he absolutely shredded them as a sophomore. He is absolutely spectacular. As a freshman, you got to keep in mind, he went to Chandler, so he was only able to play 3 high school years on varsity because at Chandler they don't typically let kids play as freshmen. So his 10,000 yards, all those numbers that you see from high school, that's all done in 3 years of work. 3 years. And then they always played the toughest schedule, the IMGs, as many tough teams as they could. And obviously, as you guys know, 3 rings. The kid is a winner. I told people back then in high school that he was the Derek Jeter of quarterbacks. He is an absolute winner that puts it all out there. All he wants to do is win. That is the type of kid that we need. Now, Trenton's not just going to hand the job to him. There's going to be a war in that quarterback room that's going to be fun for us. Finally, it is going to be fun for us as media members, as analysts, to watch develop. Trenton Bourguet is not just handing that job over. And guess what? Conover doesn't want to hand it to him either. I've said that about Bourguet. These two want to go to war with each other. And watching this thing develop is really going to set the tone for what kind of identity ASU's offense is going to have on the field.
Now, ASU's getting some young defenders in Saguaro alum Tristan Monday, who comes over from Wisconsin, Chandler High grad Tate Romney over from BYU, Queen Creek grad Crew Jackson, who's transferring from Kansas State. What can you tell us about these 3 defenders?
Tate Romney was one of the most dominant linebackers that I had seen at Chandler. I don't know, maybe ever. The kid hits everything and wants to hurt people. Tristan Monday lives in backfields. I don't think we're going to be having all the problems that we've had over the past few years with problems tackling, hitting, fundamental stuff. Crew Jackson, long, lanky, safety. Man, Crew Jackson will be fun to watch, and it'll be fun to watch him develop.
So now, different than most of the members of this transfer class that we've talked about so far, DeCarlos Brooks, Chandler High product, he played quite a bit the last few years at Cal, so he's got some experience, whereas the others kind of newer to the college game. Tell us about Brooks' game, and do you see him taking on a greater role at ASU compared to what he did at Cal, where he's mainly a backup?
Look, I don't want to punish Cal. I don't really want to punish Cal. They wanted DeCarlos Brooks, and they got him, and I just don't think that they knew how to use him. I don't think that that's going to be the problem for Iguano. Iguano's very familiar with DeCarlos, knows exactly what he can do. DeCarlos runs hard. DeCarlos is a hard runner that's going to be able to, burst up the middle and pick up yards in big chunks, like he's shopping at Costco. So trust me when I tell you, DeCarlos Brooks will be a big part of the offense, and Coach Iguano will know exactly how to use him and exploit him.
So now we can't forget about special teams. ASU lost 2 snappers and a punter to the portal, but then quickly replaced them with an experienced long snapper in Slater Zellers from Cal and Scottsdale's Notre Dame Prep, and punter Josh Carlson, who comes in from New Mexico State and graduated from Gilbert High. What do you know about these 2, and what are they bringing to Tempe?
Look, I think that Coach Regal, his specialty is literally special teams, which is why he's here as a special teams coach. He knows a lot about these kids, and he knew exactly what he wanted to bring in. I'm stunned that we lost anybody because Regal is one of the best special teams coaches I think out there. I don't know. I think that we're going to be fine, and I think that those guys are going to jump right in and fill their spots.
Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot more work to go and more additions in the works through the transfer portal. But of this initial group so far, all these homegrown guys, which of these do you think has the best chance or perhaps is best poised to have a big impact in 2023?
Yeah, it's definitely got to be on the defensive side of things, right? Because we know our offense can move, and the offense, I think, is going to be consistently coached. I'll use that word. Just having Iguano back over there, I think that Bo Baldwin, while every coach is going to have egos, I think that success comes from being able to tame your own ego, communicate with the talented coaches that are in the room. And I think Bo Baldwin and Kenny Dillingham, I think they're going to be able to do that. Because of that, I think that the biggest impact is probably going to come from the defensive guys like Tate Romney, maybe Tristan Monday. And Tristan Monday probably ready to go now. Like defensive end, like I said, he's going to be living in backfields, throwing running backs down, sacking quarterbacks.
Now, of course, all these portal additions all have Arizona ties, and even a lot of the staff members, of course, have deep Arizona roots and ties of their own. There's been some fans out there that are a little bit concerned, or perhaps concerned, that there might be too much of an Arizona focus in terms of both the players and the staff. Do you share any of those concerns whatsoever?
Not really. We had to finally get an Arizona imprint on this roster, and it was done with bringing in Coach Regal and retaining Iguano, and obviously Kenny Dillingham having the ability to just run around and recruit everywhere. Like Kenny's been places, so we'll be able to get guys from the southeast and the far west or whatever. Also, the new guys, Carrington and Samples, I've heard that those guys can own Texas, like Bob McNair. So I'm not too concerned now. Now we got some guys that can recruit all over the place. We just needed that Arizona imprint that can keep the big 4-star talent kids that are in our own state and make sure that they don't leave. We're okay. This is going to be good times. Everybody's got to just get ready to activate the Valley, like Coach Dillingham says.
So if you were putting together a blueprint basically of how to do that, how to, repair these relationships within the state of Arizona, because we know the previous coaching staff just didn't prioritize the state, while still being able to go into California, Texas, other areas, how do you balance that? What would be your plan? If Chili were the recruiting coordinator for ASU under Kenny Dillingham, what would the game plan be?
They've done it. You hire Regal, you hire Amy, you keep Iguano on and actually let Iguano recruit. You've done it now. Don't forget, Coach Dillingham, he came in here and he offered. He has a relationship with the top 2 2025 flamethrowers already in Arizona. Jamar Malone, who's probably he could go down as the best quarterback ever in the history of the state with what he's doing numbers-wise. Luke Halgo over at North, he's already built those relationships himself. We're gonna be okay, in state and out of state, because Dillingham knows how to recruit elsewhere, and Iguano, he can recruit Hawaii and Utah, all those places. Regal, he has experience in California, up and down the coast. This is gonna be the ASU that we've talked about for years. This is going to be the ASU that we have wanted for years.
On that first day that Kenny took over, right after the press conference, he and Sean are doing a Zoom with so many local high school coaches, and of course the focus is kind of repairing those relationships with the local high school community after kind of years of relative neglect. What's the feedback you've been hearing from those those high school coaches here locally about the initial efforts that ASU and Dilly and his staff are making?
So a lot of the kids that they're grateful that the call happened, the call took place. But if you get it, there's been action behind that. What's it called? The quarterback over at Sunny Slope, Luke Moga, was just offered. I know that Andre Gibson, the stud 2024 defensive back from Desert Edge, he absolutely loves Arizona. If you follow my sideline sightings pieces on Devil's Digest, you'll see all these kids. They want to be here. And now Coach Dillingham, Coach Iguano, and the rest of the staff has given them a reason to really, really build a relationship.
So now this week it was made official. It was news that had been speculated, and there was quite a bit of certainty for it prior to its occurrence. Jason Mons, longtime Saguaro head coach, making the jump to join ASU staff. He's been sought after for quite a while to make that leap to the college level. What do you think made this the right time and the right fit for him to make that move, and what does he bring to Arizona State?
Mons is a family guy. Mons is a big family guy. And I don't just mean the football family, the football players and all that. Aside from that, dude, he's a family man. He has 2 young kids. He has an amazing wife. And he doesn't want to uproot and have them all move around. I guess he went through some of that stuff himself. And I'll let him tell his own story, but you're getting a dude as long as I've known Mons, he's always been about doing what's best for the team. What's best for the team? How can I make sure that the team is successful in its entirety? It's never about just one kid. It's never about one coach. It's always about how do we win this ring, because that's the reward for coaching a team. Now, if you want to chase the individual accolades, if you don't care about those Pac-12 championships, if you don't care about, that national championship, you go get somebody else. But if you want those collective rings that represent what the team did on the season, you go grab somebody like Jason Mons. And that's what ASU did. And that was one of the smartest things to do, because he has such a huge name within the Valley that when people hear his name, they always associate it with a winner. He's won like 7 championships or whatever, and had like 6 in a row at one time. He's won at the highest level. He took Saguaro from 4A to the highest level, the Open Division, and won a championship. I mean, if that doesn't tell you about what kind of teacher, what kind of coach he is, I don't know what does. But they should be excited, and he knows how to coach tight ends. He's going to be great, and I bet you he's going to flip one or pick a big time one out of the portal that we don't even know about yet.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But just, you mentioned earlier the kind of the Mount Rushmore of local high school coaches, guys, obviously like Mons, Regal, Sean Aguano. You throw in Kenny Dillingham and his extensive ties here as well. Altogether, how effective can this coaching staff be in keeping this top local high school talent home?
I think they can be super effective at keeping the local talent home. I know, and you kind of brought this up earlier. Like, there's a lot of people that are questioning or wondering, and I've seen some of the stuff on the boards that this look AU staff. I need people to understand. Coach Regal has almost 10 years of Power 5 coaching experience. He's not a high school coach anymore. Coach Aguano, he's been doing this long enough and has sent some guys to the NFL. He is not a high school coach anymore. So the idea that this isn't a qualified staff, it's almost absurd. And listen, I want the fans to be excited about these guys. Bo Baldwin, don't kill him for what happened over at Cal Poly, because keep in mind, he really only got a year over there because of the whole pandemic and all that stuff. And when he took that thing over, they were an option team. Mm-hmm. That was their offense. He had to revamp that roster, and he only got a year to really do it. But what he did for Spencer Brash over there, he saved Spencer Brash's career over at Cal Poly. And Spencer Brash was a highly touted quarterback that went to Berkeley. So I think that people need to take a step back and really look at what kind of player developer he is. Don't forget old boy Cooper Kupp, who had a pretty good year a couple years, last year's Super Bowl? I mean, that's one of his guys. That's one of his guys. So I think, man, this staff is A1 as far as I'm concerned right now. And I think everybody should be excited because samples, everybody wanted samples. Everybody. You start digging into the internet and you'll see. He was in high demand. Carrington, I think that people are going to be pleasantly surprised with how this staff develops a lot of these kids, and there's going to be more player development going on than we've seen in the past. I'm going to say almost 6 years, even bleeding into a little bit of the Graham era.
Now, the last one we got for you. Now, of course, we got signing day about a week away. Then the traditional signing period about a month and a half away. Now, of course, Arizona has a lot of 2023 blue chips out there. Some are already committed. Some are still, uncommitted at this point. Are there any of these key marquee local Arizona high school guys in this 2023 class? Do you think ASU has a real shot at landing?
I do. Look, out of the top, I don't know, 10 or 12, 2023 kids. It's the Michael Gardners, the Dylan Roberts, the Jacoby Lanes, the Caleb Lomus, Elijah Pages, Deuce Robinsons, and stuff like that. Jackson Bowers, Genesis Smith. I think that ASU out of that top group could probably flip at least maybe 2 or 3 of them for the early signing day. I want people to also keep in mind the blue chippiest out of all of them, Deuce Robinson, the one that everybody wants, the unicorn. I think that people need to understand Deuce is committed to signing in February. Where the ASU staff previously had lost ground in not recruiting him, from what I'm being told, between now and February is a lot of time to build a relationship. Coach Dillingham, Coach Regal, Coach Iguano, Coach Amy, Coach Mons, those guys are all relationship builders. Those are all relationship guys. Deuce is a very, very special situation. He's not going to get caught up. I personally don't think that he's going to get caught up in all the extra hype and hoopla and all that stuff. The NIL is the NIL, and, I can't control that. Nobody can. But Deuce Robinson is a kid that is a relationship guy. And to hear that, between now and February is a lot of time to build a relationship, I think that, with the staff that we have, there's reason to be excited because he is not committing on the 21st.
Jilly, my man, before we get you out of here, tell the good people listening how they can follow along with your coverage and what you got going on social media.
At Just Chili, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, holler at your guy. Y'all know what it is. And Devil's Digest, during the football season, I do the sideline sightings piece, usually every home game. And, you can catch me in the gym with Joe Healy. We're training for WrestleMania. And, Brad, I'm just waiting to grab some food with you because I know you're a foodie like myself. I know you love Fat Sal's. So, I know me and you vibe on the same food lane, on the food wave.
There you go. Me and you, yeah, we'll get all swole, and then you can feed the beast there with old Brad Denny. That sounds like a plan.
You know the deal.
All right, my brother. Always appreciate you, my friend. All the best to you and the fam for the holidays. We'll catch up here much sooner than the amount of time it took between appearances 1 and 2. I'll tell you that much. Appreciate that. I love y'all to death. Hey, y'all have happy holidays, and everybody make sure to tune in and speak of the Devils. Before we get you all caught up on ASU's happenings in and out of the transfer portal, if you're trying to transfer some gifts to those you love this holiday season, that is creeping up. We are getting scary close to them holidays, whatever it is you might celebrate. But I got the solution for you. If you're still shopping for the Sun Devils in your life, and if you're listening to this show, you're one of them, and you probably got a lot of them. You can kill all that shopping, get it all done in one spot, and that's going to be Cactus Sports. Whether if you want to get down to their store location on Mill Avenue or if you're shopping online at cactussports.com, you can get everything that you need. If you want to treat yourself a little bit, hey, you got my permission to do that. But you can also treat the loved ones in your life that are supporters of the Maroon and Gold, or maybe, hey, if you got maybe a U of A Wildcat in the family, you want to try to convert them, that's one of the best things ever. Get them some Maroon and Gold for the holidays. Get them in a jolly spirit with some Sparky in their life. If you're ordering by December 17th, then you should be able to get your deliveries in by Christmas. If you're ordering online, of course, that's cactussports.com if you do the normal shipping option that they have there. So get it in. We're about a week away. No better time to get that shopping done. We're talking about ASU t-shirts, hats, long sleeves, hoodies, shorts, things for men, women, children, every single thing you need. That's ASU paraphernalia. You can get, of course, at Cactus Sports. So get on down to their store location on Mill Avenue or check them out online at cactussports.com. Think local, buy local, be local.
All right, so let's dive into ASU's flurry of portal activity. And, of course, that includes guys that are jumping in the portal with eyes on leaving. And, of course, guys who decided to come back to Tempe via the portal. And perhaps, one guy who went in, came out. As we talked about last week, here are some of the names that we discussed. Again, if you want to listen back to the episode, you can get more detailed. But, of course, the portal it opened on December 5th and is running into January 18th. And then there will be another window in the spring. But Kewan Markham, quarterback Paul Tyson, defensive lineman Joe Moore, Omar Norman Lott, offensive guard Ladarius Henderson, running back Daniel Ngata, kicker Jace Feely, long snapper Gage King, and long snapper John Furlman. Those guys were already previously in the portal. So since that time, there are a few more guys that we should dive into. Starting off with ASU's lone representative on the Pac-12, all Pac-12 first team. Although, Joe, I know this is something that you talked about last week. The AP and their team, thankfully added X-Valide to their first team. It was the second team designation from the conference's own all-conference squads. But punter Eddie Chaplitsky entered the portal, and he has already found a new home. Like former teammate Eric Gentry, he's heading to USC.
Surprise, surprise. That was one that if you're in the huddle on Devil's Digest, as you should be, got a little heads up prior to that announcement that he was going to be entering the portal. Obviously you're not going to treat lightly the departure of a first-team all-conference punter, but you know what? He was a guy that replaced a first-team all-conference punter that opted to transfer out. Not saying that they're a dime a dozen. I'm just saying that the proof is there that these sort of players can ultimately be replaced.
All right, so another guy who made far less of an impact than Chaplitsky last year, a guy who came to Tempe with some high hopes after having some success in the SEC with Vanderbilt. Wide receiver Cam Johnson is back in the portal. He was beaten out really by Gio Sanders in terms of a guy who can be really running with the starters out of the slot. Cam just totaled 10 catches for 84 yards on the season, and now he'll be looking to cap off his career elsewhere. Yeah,
that was hard to understand. The season that he had for Arizona State, I had very high expectations. I was almost inclined to, when we did our preseason show, I think I was about to name him my favorite for the receptions leader just because he was someone that was proven from SEC country. I would have not been correct had I made that decision. So this is one of those transfers that it just seems like it's best for everybody, for him to get a fresh start, hopefully contribute more, because you feel like ASU is in a position where it's going to get better at the pass-catching positions as opposed to getting worse. So if he had a hard time really getting much action last year, then that might become even more difficult as this upcoming season goes on. So when you have limited time left in your college career, it makes sense. So that's one where it makes sense for him to depart. It's unfortunate it didn't work out for him here, though.
All right, so now we're moving on to quarterback Emory Jones, perhaps the marquee transfer portal addition from a season ago. Guy who opened the year as the Sun Devil starting quarterback, made 7 starts. Was, of course, knocked out of that Washington game that Trenton Bourguet came off the bench and started to deal in. But just, then when he finally came back after his concussion and, wasn't able to lead the team to any points or after the first quarter, it was just really kind of a bad sign. And also, I kind of feel bad for Emory in a ways, just because he was kind of saddled with Glenn Thomas as an offensive coordinator, a guy who really did not play to his strengths. And we saw, of course, the offense just really take a completely different shape and character once Sean Aguano took away the play-calling duties from Thomas and was dealing as well. Emory is a guy who has some good physical tools and really was a guy who won over that locker room pretty quick. I mean, he was named a team captain, not too long after he arrived in Tempe. And if you saw social media, once Emory made his announcement that he's going to jump in the portal, you saw the level of respect that he had garnered from his teammates during his just the one season in Tempe. But with Kenny Dillingham, coming in and wanting to put in his own offense, and perhaps there was maybe some thought that Emory, being a mobile guy, could be the next reclamation project. But it seems that Emory's future and fortunes will be found elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's similar commentary to Johnson, where it's someone that I believed was going to have a much better season than he did. There are a variety of contributing factors that led to that season that did not happen. Just felt like his back would be up against the wall to reclaim the starting quarterback position. Case like that, to get a fresh start is something that's probably best for everybody involved. ASU obviously has already made an acquisition in the transfer portal as far as quarterback depth is concerned. I think everyone should feel just fine if Trenton Bourguet continues to be the starting quarterback. So, once again, it's someone that he's a much better athlete than to stick around just to be a backup quarterback. So again, it makes sense, and it should come as a shock to nobody that he's in the transfer portal.
Yeah, just would be nice to see what he could do, kind of without with a competent offensive coordinator at play. In his one season, of course, mentioned he started 7 games, played in 8, threw for 1,533 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 picks, and kind of an indictment to what Thomas was doing in terms of game planning. Only rushed for 31 total yards. Now, of course, that is a figure that is impacted by sacks. By the way, the college game keeps stats, but last year he led Florida in rushing. He's a guy who in the SEC ran for nearly 800 yards. So just kind of a bad fit. So, a guy that's well respected. So we'll see what he's able to do elsewhere. Now, a couple of other more impactful transfer portal departures for ASU. Defensive tackle B.J. Green is in the portal. And, of course, he came in as a little under the radar, a walk-on, but a true freshman in 2021. Ultimately led ASU in sacks with 5. Now, this year, the ASU had their struggles in terms of generating a pass rush, but he did, again, tie for the team lead in sacks. Granted, the total was half of that. There was a 4-way tie with Sun Devils that leading the way with 2.5 sacks. But this is a guy that did not have a huge frame, relied on quickness, so wasn't out there as a starter, didn't play a high snap count, but in his situational usage, puts together some of the better metrics of interior linemen, not just in the Pac-12, but across the country, really. ASU did a good job of getting those stats together, but this is a big loss because the defensive line is an area that has suffered a number of departures, and whether it is through the portal or graduation, that a guy like B.J. Green, with the success that he's had at this Pac-12 level, could have been a key piece.
Yeah, and this is one different than the ones that we've mentioned. You would assume that the coaching staff is going to try to reclaim. Obviously to go through the names that we've already gone through. Chaplitsky's already at USC. ASU's already replaced him. Johnson, Emory Jones, you just don't see any way that these players would return to ASU. B.J. Green, someone that maybe you could hold out some hope for. He's got a couple years left of playing eligibility at a position group that needs bodies, needs talent and experience. So, you would hope that Brian Ward, Vince Amy, and the others are, trying to do what they can to get him back, because as we'll talk about with this class already, it happened last year. Guys enter and come back. It happens at a lot of places. So entry to the transfer portal is not always a guarantee that you're going to leave. Obviously, the odds are higher that you do than that you don't, but it's not a 0% chance of return. So this is a player of a lot of the ones that are in the transfer portal right now from ASU are the ones that you'd absolutely love to see come back if possible.
Now, of course, he's a guy that is from Georgia, so perhaps the distance might be playing a factor. And I know there's a lot of fans out there who are always hesitant about picking players up from the Central and Eastern time zones, just because the stick rate, I guess, is not the best. But yeah, we'll see what happens with B.J. Green. And another key loss for ASU is center Ben Scott. Now, he's been a 3-year starter on ASU's offensive line, of course. First couple seasons at the right tackle spot, slid in and took over the center duties this season. And this is an offensive line that is going to be have a very different look to it this upcoming season. A lot of departures, but Ben Scott was a guy that has been a multi-year starter for the Sun Devil program at the Power 5 level. Had some good moments as a member of that offensive line, but now right now he's going to be soliciting some options out there as to taking his services elsewhere.
Yeah, again, and that's the similar thing to say about him as with the B.J. Green, that you'd certainly hope that the coaching staff is trying every avenue it can to keep him here in Tempe. Who knows what odds are that could be the case, but when you have experience and talent, that's something you got to try to keep on board by any means necessary. So yeah, not a great sign. I know that came as a bit of a surprise for him to enter the transfer portal. Although, I mean, at this point, it's like you just kind of hold your breath and think that everybody's fair game for it. So we'll see how that happens. ASU just needs to get bodies on both lines, and returning ones that have a lot of experience and have contributed would be a wonderful way to go about doing that if possible.
So before we get into ASU's portal additions, let's talk about a portal return. And as you mentioned, Joe, last year it was defensive tackle Omar Norman Lott who entered the portal, looked around, and ultimately wanted to come back and play for defensive line coach Robert Rodriguez. Almost perhaps a similar situation this year. Anthony Cooper, ASU's defensive end, one of those 4 Sun Devils who tied for the team lead with 2.5 sacks from a year ago, entered the portal, looked around, but ultimately decided to come back and play for new defensive line coach Vince Amy. So Anthony Cooper, of course, another hometown guy. I believe he played ball in the West Valley. So Cooper is back in the fold. A guy who just whenever I talk to Robert Rodriguez, I always seem to be saying good things about Cooper, what he brought to the team. Kind of one of the perhaps under the radar, more unheralded contributors there. Good against the run as well. So getting Cooper back, and you mentioned Joe, the lines need bodies, and so a guy who is able to come back in with a high level, with a good level of production, but also a high level of experience is going to be a big boost.
Yeah, his entry into the transfer portal was something that came as a surprise to me, just simply by the fact that he's a local guy, and that's the MO, bread and butter of this coaching staff. If they're able to bring in a bunch of the transfers that we'll break down here in a moment and have that area of emphasis, you would think that keeping your own guys intact, if they are an Arizona product, would be right up their alley, and that's proven to be something that's that there's been a level of success. So there's no shame or concern or anything like that, red flags about players who just want to assess things, especially with the new coaching staff, because there is a relatively limited window of opportunity to enter the transfer portal or to seek those options. We've all seen all this data that's going on online as far as the amount of portal entries versus positions that are available at colleges and how things have worked out over these last year or two since this transfer portal really became a thing. So it's all madness. So, you're not going to hold it against people. But, once again, to get an experienced player back, that's a big deal. So that is a win.
All right, let's break down some of the portal additions. Last week we talked about defensive end Tristan Monday, a former Saguaro SaberCat who's coming to Tempe from Wisconsin, and linebacker/safety, kind of the hybrid. Crew Jackson, who spent a couple seasons with Kansas State, a former Queen Creek product. You're going to notice a common through line through all of these players that we're about to talk about, and that they all played high school ball in Arizona. And let's start off with kind of the big name here, wide receiver Jake Smith. Now, he most recently was at USC, but has been out of football for last season. He played, of course, at Notre Dame Prep, 6 foot, 200-pounder. But in that 2019 class, it was hard to he's a top 50 recruit nationally. He was the 2018 National Gatorade Player of the Year. 2 years with the Longhorns, 48 catches, 568 yards, and 9 scores. Unfortunately, suffered an injury there, and there's been some talk about just in terms of their difference of opinion in terms of the treatment and recovery process there. Transferred to USC, but ultimately never took a snap for the Trojans. Of course, with the injury, did not play in 2021. Then it was really kind of not playing. I don't believe on the roster in this past 2022 season. But he's back home and has 2 years left to play. And if he's able to get going, he's a guy who played a lot of slot during his time at Texas. But tremendous athlete and back home. And this could be a nice big boost for that Sun Devil passing game.
Yeah, this one's kind of unique because, there were reports that came out over the weekend about him joining the transfer hall for ASU. Going back through old Twitter stuff, I think he had a Twitter account in the past, maybe when he was in high school or early in college, that doesn't seem to be active anymore. So he's not out there making this announcement. So it's not really official, though none of them really are because they're doing it on their own. So it's going to be a thing that, hey, this guy's in class, this guy's at spring ball kind of thing, or, whatever news is forthcoming. But, it's kind of an A plus B equals C situation where, every single expectation is that the guy's on board. So I'm not trying to throw doubt into it. It's just a little unique compared to the others. So, unique in a lot of different respects. Someone that was just an absolutely elite high school do-it-all type of player. I mean, we're talking someone kind of in the mold of that, maybe DJ Foster or Christian Kirk, or these ones that just impact the game in a lot of different ways. Made his way to Texas, was productive there from an early point as a true freshman. But he's been out of action for a couple of years. Didn't even see the field at USC. Quite frankly, I don't even know where he'd be like eligibility-wise. Does he get both those years back? Does he get the COVID year? Does he have a year to play? Does he have 2 or 3? A lot of questions to be answered. But I think in every capacity, it's worth the scholarship. I mean, man, if he even gives you what he gave Texas, that's worth a ride right there. If he can give you anything compared to what was expected out of high school, that's a torque bomb of an acquisition in and of itself, because that's a guy, again, the national Gatorade Player of the Year. We're not just talking about the state of Arizona or, All-America teams or regional awards or something like that. The national player, the best player in the country is what he was as a high school senior at Notre Dame Prep in Scottsdale. So that's one that you'll take a flyer on if you want to consider it that every single day of the week. So we'll see. We've had this happen, sometimes in the past. I think of, this is a way throwback, but a guy like Lauren Howard, who came to ASU, a Saguaro alum, who came to ASU from Northwestern after killing it up there in the days that Dirk Cutter was over here. I don't think he ever saw the field at ASU, but he was, because of injury issues, but he was such a world beater there that, if there's risk involved, you take that risk because the reward potential is so very high. So we'll see what ASU gets out of him, because if he's healthy, if he's near what he was at Texas, let alone at the high school level, then that's an off-the-charts level of athleticism and the contribution that you can get, and ASU needs every bit of it. So real excited to see that, and you figure the guy has got a chip on his shoulder because, he was a very, very big deal, top 50 recruit, as we talked about. And so someone who's just been away from the game for a couple years now, if he gets that opportunity, you'd anticipate that he'd make the most of it.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what he's able to contribute to this program, and it might be good just because it is an area that ASU has an established player, and out of that slot, you have Gio Sanders, who put together a real breakthrough campaign. 40 catches on the year, so perhaps that lessens the pressure on Jake Smith to kind of come in and hit the ground run a little bit. But with 2 years left, it gives him some time to kind of get back in the flow of things. That doesn't have to kind of go all in on just a year. Moving over to special teams real quick. Now, we talked about Eddie Chaplitsky, the all-conference punter. He's gone. And ASU has 2 of their long snappers that were in the portal. Pretty quick, right off the bat, ASU was able to kind of fill both vacancies. They were able to get Slater Zellers from Cal, who, like Jake Smith, played prep ball at Notre Dame Prep. He's been Cal's starting long snapper for the better part of 3 seasons now, so he'll be be able to handle those duties. Now, in terms of obviously the big shoes to fill with Chaplitsky, ASU is going to for Gilbert grad Josh Carlson, who's most recently at New Mexico State. He started his college career at Dixie State. I believe that's now been renamed Utah Tech, if I'm not mistaken. But over last 2 years as a starter, averaged 41 and 40.5 yards per punt. Perhaps doesn't have necessarily the leg that a Turk or even a Chaplitsky had in terms of blasting a ton of balls over 50 yards. Just has 14 such kicks over the last couple of years. But Josh Carlson, arriving in Tempe, with eyes on that starting punter job, he has 1 year of eligibility left.
Love it when a plan comes together and you feel right about something. Because when the 2 snappers for ASU entered the portal, and when the transfer portal really opened for business, just starting to look at the names that were there, and I saw Zellers there, I'm like, well, that would make a lot of sense. He's from Scottsdale. He played at Cal, where he was coached by and very likely even recruited by Charlie Ragle. I saw in his Cal bio that he was rated as like the top draft eligible long snapper in the country. Got a ton of experience, been a 4-year snapper for them. I get that the position group is not something that is that sexy or attractive, but it's a necessary part of the game. It's one of those things that you only really find out about it when you got a bad one. So he's a very experienced one. So it's an area of need, and they really hit the mark with it. As far as Carlson's concerned, if you look at some of the numbers that he had early in his college career that was at a lower level, you have some of that 44, 45, 46-yard average for full seasons. So, the potential is there for him to have a bigger leg than maybe what he showed at New Mexico State, but he's got some experience, and, we'll see what goes on in that regard. You certainly hope that you don't have to rely upon him too terribly heavily and that the offense is moving a little bit. But, again, it's good to get somebody that has Division I FBS level experience if you're losing out on a first-team all-conference punter. So that was addressed quickly. You don't necessarily have to go the walk-on route or that sort of thing, which we've seen in special teams positions. So some of these areas that might not be the biggest priority for a lot of folks, it's important to address them so you can kind of have that taken care of, and you don't necessarily have to go into fall camp with the battle of a few guys who've never played, trying to fill spots that are in truth integral to the team and special teams.
Let's wind down with a trio of Chandler Wolves, guys who know pretty well ASU running back coach Sean Aguano when he was, of course, leading the powerhouse Chandler program. Starting on the defensive side of the ball, of course, that's an area where ASU's got a lot of work to do, especially at the linebacker position, because, of course, Kyle Soley and Merlin Robertson, some fixtures in this in this program are now gone. So there's going to be a lot of question marks as to who plays at that second level in Brian Ward's defense. And so Tate Romney, 6'3", 220-pounder. He's a guy that is pretty well known around these parts. Of course, 2 years at Chandler under Sean Aguano. Was a member of the 2020 class, then went on his LDS mission. In 2019, he was Arizona's 6A varsity linebacker of the year. Redshirted last year, did make 3 game appearances, and this is a key thing that we talk about the portal additions. In the old ways before the portal, you had the grad transfers, you get the 1 year. But the cool thing about, and I think this is what can help jumpstart a program, is you get guys that have multiple years. And in Romney's case, Joe, 4 years of eligibility left.
Yeah, that's a big underlying factor in a positive way among a lot of these transfers so far, is you're looking at guys that have multiple years. It's not just a bunch of one and dones. Now, granted, there's a place for the one and dones, the X Valades, the Corey Bethleys, that sort of thing. I mean, there's a place for that. You just don't want to load up on that exclusively or predominantly year over year. And as you talked about, you're hearing all these superlatives about Romney and his toughness and the way that he plays the game, whether it's from Sean Aguano himself or guys like Chili Ralph, the ones that are really dialed in. And man, it becomes very encouraging when you hear that. He could have that opportunity to put that on display sooner rather than later, because those two, well, depending on how you look at it defensively, there are going to be openings in the starting lineup across the depth chart at linebacker. So someone that's coming in who might be inexperienced when it comes to the college level, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be far behind the 8 ball. So if Romney's able to do the kind of things that he did at Chandler High School, that could put him in position to play a lot very quickly.
All right, so another marquee addition, a name that has generated some excitement since he announced his commitment to Arizona State. Quarterback Jacob Conover, coming over also from BYU, and of course, Chandler Wolf. 6'1", 205-pounder, a 4-star on the 24/7 composite, member of the 2019 class. Now, at Chandler, he was one of the most productive quarterbacks in state history. You heard Chili talk about, he did this all in 3 years, throwing for over 10,000 yards, 102 touchdown passes, 3 consecutive state championships. Now, he hasn't seen the field a whole lot for the Cougars up there in Provo, and of course they got a pretty good quarterback in Jaron Hall as well. But he threw for completed 5 of 10 passes or 45 yards in 2021. Did not complete his 1 pass attempt last season. But again, a guy who has multiple years. Conover has 3 seasons of eligibility left, so he has a chance that he's going to be battling Trenton Bourget and perhaps some other additions. But this is a guy who has multiple years left if he's able to come in and win that job.
Yeah, he helps you add depth for the immediate future. Obviously, he's going to compete to start, but if he happens not to claim the job from Trenton Bourget, then that's depth for the short term and an option as a starter for the long term. He's someone a lot of Sun Devil fans wanted here when he was coming out of high school. ASU was generally in the thick of the recruitment, it seemed like, from the outside looking in. Chose to go to BYU. So for him to come back, again, that's a big deal. That's a second go-round recruiting victory for Arizona State. And that's, become a position group of need, because you have 2 quarterbacks, basically, what you'd imagine are your second and third quarterbacks in the transfer portal. Don't imagine either of them would come back, even if Conover chose not to come to ASU. So they're becomes an instant need really for some depth there, even though you have some others, and we'll see what becomes of the depth with Bennett Meredith, Dalen McLemore, those sort of players. But again, to bring him in, he had an incredible resume and pedigree from what he did at Chandler High School. Still got a lot of time left to play at the college level, playing for his high school coach with him on the staff in Sean Aguano. So it's a win across the board when you're getting these guys in that are very, very comfortable with their former high school head coach on Arizona State staff.
All right, and the final Chandler Wolf that we'll talk about is a guy that you'll be hearing from here in just a couple of minutes. Running back DeCarlos Brooks, 5'10", 210-pounder, real powerful runner. He spent 3 years up at Cal. This past season, he carried 59 times for 250 yards and a touchdown. Also caught 8 passes for 18 yards. So obviously, when you have some ex-Valade and taking that production to the NFL, Daniel Ngata, a guy that's in the portal now. We'll see if he stick there. But there's going to be a need at running back because right now you just have 2 scholarship backs. So DeCarlos Brooks is able to kind of bring in a veteran presence, a guy who's played and knows what it takes in this conference, but just perhaps is looking for an opportunity to shine and kind of really emerge. And in an offense like Kenny Dillingham, when you were able to see what the Duck running backs were able to do last year, this could be potentially a productive fit.
Yeah, this is one that a lot of fans are really hoping and counting on to kind of level up as far as the play is concerned, because he had a couple years at Cal. We heard Chili's take on the matter, and I'm gonna trust that dude for sure. He played a fair amount. Numbers aren't out of this world, but hoping for maybe something. I'm not saying to this degree, but just something in the universe of comparison to like a Devin Lucien, who vastly outperformed what he did in the 3 years he played at UCLA and the 1 year he played at ASU. So maybe Brooks could be someone like that who just needs a change of scenery to get back with some familiar coaches to really ramp up his productivity. Of course, ASU needs to reload at running back. You've got Tevin White, you got George Hart and some others, but of course you lose ex-Valade to presumably the NFL, but he's just done playing college ball. And if Daniel Ngata chooses to transfer elsewhere and not return to ASU, then you got to get some folks out there to compete. So Brooks is someone that brings that experience from the Pac-12, and that is a valuable thing.
All right, so before we talk to DeCarlos about why he came to ASU and what he's going to bring to the Sun Devil attack, let's kind of look at some of the position groups. Now, should throw out there, every position group on the field could use a quality portal addition or several. So this isn't to say that necessarily any particular positions are done and dusted. But there are some position groups that are looking more solid, and there are that still I think remain in serious need classification. And starting off, let's start off with the offensive line, Joe. 4 starters, are gone if Ben Scott stays in the portal. He's one, of course, the starting center. Ladarius Henderson will be playing for the Wolverines next year. Chris Martinez, Des Holmes are guys who open the season as starters. Now, you have guys like Isaiah Glass, Emmett Boley, who started last year. Joy Ramos, unfortunately, was injured and missed all last year, but he's a guy who has Power 5 level starting experience. But the offensive line in total is something that you can never have enough quality depth, and not just the depth, but for ASU's case, you need quality starters in there to plug in, because you can't necessarily just count on some of those guys that you've had in the program, the Ben Brays of the world, to maybe able to step up and be sure things in the starting lineup.
I mean, if you're talking about the transfer portal only, the offensive line really has to be the position group that is the most important, urgent target for a variety of reasons. Number one, you need bodies. You need to replace starters. You need to improve the quality of it. But it's something that you're not going to replace by way of your high school recruiting. You can bring in high school running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, players maybe in the secondary linebacker, and they can play right away in a lot of cases if you get the right talent there. Offensive line, that's like that one position group out of all of them where, of course, as we know, you're just a lot less likely to be ready to contribute at an immediate level. So if we're specifying the transfer portal needs for a number of different reasons, yeah, that is the area to attack. You got to see them bring in, multiple. We're talking about 3 to 5 guys, kind of like what they did last year, if not more, it's a daunting task because everybody's going to be after those big bodies. I mean, you're seeing, players that are from like the FCS level that are getting high major offers for some of the blue bloods. So it is a feeding frenzy on offensive linemen. Tough to find really good ones to be able to come in because they're at such a premium. But that is a battle ASU has to prepare to fight.
Yeah, ASU might be getting some good news there on that front, but they're going to need multiple guys to help solidify that offensive line. But also the defensive line is in dire need of some more quality additions because you look at the top 8 guys, the entire 2 deep from the season opener a year ago. You are looking at 6 of those guys being gone with T.J. Pesafea, Nessa Jade Silvera, Trevez Moore, guys who have exhausted their eligibility, and then Joe Moore, B.J. Green, Omar Norman Lauder, guys that are in the portal. Now, I'm hearing good things that Michael Matus might be considering coming back, and that would add, of course, a veteran presence, one of the most respected voices in that locker room. We mentioned that Tristan Monday is coming over from Wisconsin to bolster that line, but Vince Amy is a guy that knows what it takes to have a quality defensive line. He wants to run 8-9 guys out there and have that rotation in the game flow consistent. He wants to keep those guys fresh into the fourth quarter. So ASU, there's some quality young talent. The Robbie Harrisons, Garrett Stansberry's on this roster that you expect to make a big leap forward as they grow and evolve. But you just simply need more quality bodies on that defensive line too.
Yeah, I mean, that's like 1 and 1A when it comes to the O-line and the D-line as far as need from the transfer portal. I just put it at like slightly behind because that is a position group where depending on what ASU does in the high school recruiting, the JUCO recruiting, you feel a little bit more comfortable throwing those guys in on the defensive line early in their careers as opposed to the offensive line. But as we know, I mean, you need to get bodies, you need to get talent. We just saw it's a night and day difference between this past year's defensive line and what we saw, the year or two before that. Even during the COVID season, you saw a very active defensive line with the likes of Tyler Johnson, DJ Davidson, those types of players. So, it's a very, very daunting task for the staff to reassemble a defensive line while you're all, losing pieces. You have multiple players that are entering the transfer portal. You have a few departures that are done by way of graduation from a group that struggled to begin with. So that's going to be a task and a test and probably a multi-year project to put together. So that is going to be, again, something where a lot of work to be done.
I think the linebacker group also is one that you need to have continued additions there. Connor Soley is the only returning starter from a year ago, and he had kind of an up-and-down debut season as a starter. Will Schaefer and Caleb McCullough are returning guys that have an opportunity. We talked about Tate Romney being added to that mix. Now, ASU will likely be running a 4-2-5, so perhaps you're not having as many linebackers out there, but you need more quality scholarship, Pac-12 caliber linebackers, and this could be a situation where you see them grab another couple of guys.
Yeah, you need to get bodies there. Give me like at least one guy that's got a good amount of starting experience so you can feel good about it. As you talked about, probably running a lot of 4-2-5 out there. So as far as just the alignment and the depth and the number of human beings that are necessary out there might not be as high as it otherwise would be. But yeah, for confidence purposes, for effectiveness purposes, you want to get some guys out there with some experience. So that's something that I lump in there as a high priority target as well.
The running back group, you have only right now 2 scholarship backs in Tevin White. Now, of course, a 4-star prospect and signee and flashed a little bit in that Territorial Cup game. So perhaps he's ready to take that big leap forward in year 2. I believe now that, especially since that U of A game was his 5th game, so his red shirt was burned. George Hart is a guy who came in as a walk-on, but it was elevated to a scholarship status. And then we mentioned DeCarlos Brooks as well. But I think that you could definitely add another back there. And I also think quarterback is a position that you shouldn't be done quite yet. Now, I will be remiss of my own personal brand if I didn't say Grayson McCall, ASU, pick up the phone. Consider Arizona State. But in any event, I think that you need to add another arm to that room as well. Perhaps not as dire a need as the lines, but I think the offensive backfield could use some quality additions as well.
Yeah, running back for sure. And, man, I mean, there's got to be a sales pitch to be given to experienced running backs. If you look at, even though it's a new staff, you still have Sean Aguano, and he can brag about what he's done with Eno Benjamin, Rashad White, ex-Valaday. I mean, that sort of productivity, that has to be appealing. And Kenny Dillingham and what he's done with running backs in the schools that he's coached, that's appealing too. So that's a position group where I'm hoping that they can, it may be tough to get an ex-Valaday type, a 3,000-yard runner, who leads the nation in a lot of career categories coming into ASU, but somebody with some talent that is not necessarily, a project or someone that's unproven. That's a position group where I think ASU has a lot of credibility to be able to strike something very impressive. Obviously we got to keep in mind that this early run of the transfer portal is not it. There's going to be that other one that comes in around after spring ball. Yep. So there are a couple go-arounds that they have. So whatever happens in this next month or so, that's certainly not the end of the story. Quarterback, as you mentioned, I think that's something that would be very good as well. I'd be eager to see what they do there because, it could be a bit of a kind of tip in their hand. I mean, if you go after someone like a McCall or Spencer Sanders or these players that have a wealth of starting experience, okay, then that shows what they feel about what they've got, because it's going to be difficult to appeal to someone of that caliber if you're not almost not handing the reins over to them, but given a wide open opportunity for that. I'm not saying that's going to be the case or not going to be the case, but if they do make an acquisition at quarterback, in addition to what they've already done, it will be interesting to see, what sort of caliber player will they get? Will they get someone that's got starting experience or someone that is at the earlier stage of his career? But I'll agree. I'm curious to see what happens with the remaining depth at quarterback, because you're just curious if those beyond Bourget and Conover at this point, what are their odds of seeing the field at Arizona State? Who knows? So. Again, the portal giveth, the portal taketh away, even though in this first go-around for ASU, if there is a cruising altitude where you get the players in there that are going to be in there, you wonder if you're going to see a rush at the tail end of it, guys that are just, 50-50, and they say, screw it, I'll just throw my name in there just so I'm in there. Again, it's a wild, wild deal, but I agree with you. So if we're kind of taking the opposite of it, weird to say wide receiver and tight end that you feel kind of comfortable with, because this time last year those were probably at the very top of the list, but those are ones that you do feel good with, and also in the secondary, and with Carter Brown choosing to remain, you feel good at pretty much all the special teams positions now. Yeah,
that's true. And it's real quick on the quarterback, you kind of raise a good point with talking about the running backs with the sales pitch that Dillingham can do. I think for quarterbacks, I mean, just say, hey, look what I did for Bo Nix. And so, perhaps that could be appealing to some quarterbacks out there that are perhaps looking to level up in kind of that way. A guy like Hudson Card is a guy, hasn't had a whole lot of opportunity, but came in has a lot of tools. It'll be interesting to see, because, if they make some more additions to that room. And I totally agree, pass catchers, you got to like where you are. We have both of your top two tight ends and Conyers and Swinson coming back, your top two receivers and Badger and Sanders. You add Jake Smith. I think this is a group that could probably use a guy like a real burner to kind of take the top off an opposing defense. But you feel pretty good, as mentioned, off the top. No position group is in a prime position. You can always add more talent. You can always add more competition for spring ball and into fall camp. The defensive backs, I think this is a good group. Now, we'll see what happens with Isaiah Johnson. In his limited playing time last year, really was able to show why he was such a well-regarded high 4-star recruit. Just got to get out of his own way. Got to get on the field, because there's a great core. Ro Torrance, I thought, had an outstanding year. I think on our last episode, I think that he's a guy that should be all-conference caliber if he just played more games. Ed Woods really emerged as a quality cornerback starter as well. Jordan Clark, having the versatility to play safety and the nickel as well. Mason Williams. Chris Edmonds was kind of had that same ball hawking tendencies at the FBS level as he did at the FCS level as well. Of course, you lose Corey Bethley, so I do think that there's some safety help that needs to be added in terms of perhaps an experienced guy. Maybe you had a thumper in that Bethley mold, but with your pass catchers and also the guys tasked to stop the opposing pass catchers, I think you feel pretty good right now that you're out, that you have some solid footing that you can go improve upon in the weeks and months ahead.
Before we roll our way into a chat with new Sun Devil running back DeCarlos Brooks, you can roll into the holiday season and into this new year in style with a new vehicle from Jones Auto Group. They've got 4 dealership locations in the state of Arizona. They've all been family-owned and operated for more than 50 years. Folks at Jones Auto Group are avid supporters of ASU and Sun Devil athletics. Jones Auto Group is ready to roll out the maroon carpet VIP treatment to fellow members of the Sun Devil family, just like you. As you know and have seen, they've been steadily involved in the NIL game for ASU for a few years now. That certainly means something. These folks are dedicated to Sun Devil athletics. They are invested in the success of all Sun Devils. They support the Sun Devil community, all student athletes, everyone affiliated with Arizona State University. I'm telling you, these folks are in the Sun Devil landscape in a way that you should support. At Jones Auto Group, the Sun Devil community is truly treated like family. If you're concerned about any sort of issues that might be standing in your way from getting a new automobile, whether it's credit issues, whatever it may be, just talk to the good folks at Jones Auto Group. They will outline every possible option to create a winning game plan just for you. If you want to see how you can possibly save money on tax dollars that you spend on a new vehicle, that adds up when you're spending money on a new ride, but that is yet another unique advantage that Jones Auto Group can discuss with you. So if you're just even considering a new vehicle, talk to Jones Auto Group. How you do it is you text DEVILS to 67199. So pull out your cellular mobile telephone device, get to the text messaging, type in DEVILS, DEVILS. I think you know that by now. Send it on to 67199. You'll get in contact with Jones Auto Group. And who you'll get in contact with, it's not just some customer service representative or some automated robot response or someone that's on another planet, different continent that's going to answer your question. We're talking about you getting in contact with the owner, Parker Jones. Not only the owner and GM, but a third-generation Arizona State alum, and just like you, a die-hard Sun Devil fan. So to get in contact with him, to talk about purchasing the vehicle of your dreams through Jones Auto Group, text DEVILS to 67199. Again, that's DEVILS to 67199. You can check out their online inventory, browse, take a look, do some dream shopping. It's the holiday season. It's the time for that. Take action on that. Get that ride that you've been wanting for years. Check out their inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles at JonesAutoCenters.com. Jones Auto Group, Arizona's best since 1970.
All right, so first question is also probably the big question. How does it feel to be coming home?
Man, it feels amazing. Like everybody's just been saying, it's just like I'm home. Like there's no better feeling than home. Like I've been gone for a couple years, and just to say, I'm at home and I'm playing the sport I love is a great feeling.
How long were you in the portal before ASU kind of first contacted you? And what were some of the things that, what was kind of their sales pitch and some of the things they told you that ultimately made you want to come back and be a Sun Devil?
Yeah, so like as soon as the fifth hit, I think really that's when coaches started like hitting me up, and it so happened to be Coach Regal and Coach Iguano, and they were just like, hey, let's set something up to see if you can come home and just like meet, just like see us, see everybody, see the coaching staff, and that's what we did.
Once you got to see everything that the ASU had to offer, ultimately, why was this the right place for you to continue your college career?
I just feel like I bought into what the coaches were telling me, and I have great relationships with the coach, and like I was just saying, like there's no better feeling than home. Just coupled with that, and the opportunities that they were saying that were going to be presented to me on and off the field, it's just it was a no-brainer after all those meetings, honestly.
Obviously, one of those coaches you've known for quite some time, and Coach Sean Iguano, going back to the Chandler days. How does it feel to be going back and playing for Coach Iguano again?
It feels good, man. Like Coach Iguano's known me since I was 14, 15 years old, so he knows me. He knows me as a player through and through, and he's seen me grow and, prosper, and he's part of that growth and success, honestly, just coaching under him. So it's honestly a great feeling. And now that he's my position coach, it's, he gets to coach me even more than he was coaching me in high school, really. So we're going to be locked in now.
Now, obviously, there's just been so much talk, especially here locally, about the local players, local high school recruiting as it relates to Arizona State University. From a player's perspective, how much allure does playing for that hometown school and the quote unquote proverbial hometown hero have for a player?
For me, it's honestly everything, because just being a player from Arizona, people kind of downplay just being from Arizona as a player, and as thinking that we're not that good. But all these other, because I've been from California and I've heard what they've said, but at the same time, it's like we know we're good and we just want to come out and represent that. So for all the Arizona kids out there, just rep your state so we can show all these other Californias and Floridas and stuff like that. Like Arizona got some talent too. We got some real talent.
Yeah, obviously, as a guy who played here at the high school level, then ultimately went to a Power 5 school out of state. There's just so much talk and so much focus, from this new staff under Kenny Dillingham, that ASU is going to really kind of refocus the efforts and kind of make Arizona the priority. What do you feel like local high school players want from their hometown university? Obviously, playing in an era where ASU perhaps wasn't doing nearly as good of a job as it seems to so far right now.
I would just say, just giving them a shot, giving them a chance, giving them an opportunity to, go out there and just play for the home state. I know when I was in high school, I didn't get really recruited by ASU or Arizona. So, and I thought I was pretty good just, from being in my state. So I think just giving them that opportunity, talking to them, recruiting them, going out there, I think that's got to really help, the kids in the state just be where they want to be.
Now, in addition to the hometown school, the local angle, is there any kind of added incentive, added fuel, knowing that the ASU programs had a rough, about a year and a half, a couple of years, but to have an opportunity to come in here and be part of the group that elevates the program back to where it needs to be?
I think that's just got to be the biggest honor, just repping your state and winning games and things of that nature. I think that's just got to be the biggest honor, honestly. I see no reason why we can't do that. And once we do that, once we win games and we start repping our state, more kids from Arizona and even from other states are going to try to be like, you know what, Arizona got some real talent. They can really do this. So, it's got to be good.
Obviously a couple of years over in Berkeley playing for Cal. What were some of the things and the biggest lessons that you learned during your time as a Golden Bear that you're going to bring with you?
I would say trust yourself. Trust yourself as a player. Trust yourself as a person. Always play with confidence, regardless of coaches and players and staff and politics. Always have your confidence, and obviously just I've learned little nuances to the game that have helped elevate my game from high school, so that's really helped as well.
Now, what's been your impression so far of your new head coach, Kenny Dillingham, and what he's trying to do in terms of revitalizing not just the Sun Devil program, but kind of activating the Valley, as he likes to say?
Well, I've known Coach Dillingham for a while just because he's recruited me from high school. But honestly, I think he's a bright young coach that's fired up and ready to, do something really special here in the Valley.
Any ASU fans who might not have seen you in action for Cal, give our listeners a scouting report on what kind of skill set you bring to the field.
I mean, I think I'm very explosive as a back. I think I can really do it all. I can catch out the backfield. I can block. I'm a strong runner. I got speed to run away from safeties and corners and such of that nature. So I'm going to be excited for the Saturdays to come.
Now, what really kind of stands out to you about Kenny Dillingham's offensive scheme, and what kind of role do you see yourself, or do you understand that you're going to be playing within that offense?
He likes running backs. He likes running backs to catch out the backfield. He likes putting in two backs at the same time, split backs. He utilizes them a lot. So that was my first impression, honestly.
Obviously, you're not the only Cal player that's going to be returning home. With ASU also got a commitment yesterday as well from Slater Zellers. What's ASU getting in him?
Zeller, you just got to get consistency from Zeller. that's my boy. You just got to get constant consistency. You know, he's an older guy. You know, he puts work in the weight room. Like, you just got to get consistency from him, honestly. And he's a funny dude.
And then finally, you know, when you're looking ahead to this upcoming 2023 season, obviously be a total new era of Sun Devil football. What are some of the goals and things that you want to achieve in this upcoming season?
Honestly, I just want to win over the Valley, win for the team, win for the state. You know, go out there and showcase my skills, obviously. You know, just keep on elevating my success so one day I could get drafted.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. We'd like to thank our guests, Chili and DeCarlos Brooks. Make sure you stay with us on the social media side of things because, again, this portal madness isn't stopping down. It's slowing down anytime soon. It's going to be running through the end or middle of next month, and then you'll be ramping up for spring ball. A lot is going on, so make sure you stay with us. You can follow the show on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Facebook at facebook.com/SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils, and give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at BDenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy 42. Once again, huge shout out and thank you to our sponsors, including DeFalco's Deli, Cactus Sports, Devil's Digest, and Jones Auto Group, as well, of course, as Spaghetti Shack, which you know by now. Spaghetti Shack is not just Sun Devil owned, but owned and operated by a former Sparky the Sun Devil. They are located in Tempe near the intersection of Rural and Guadalupe at 6340 South Rural Road, Suite 114. And the Spaghetti Shack is open Monday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m., Fridays and Saturdays from 11 to 10:30, and Sundays from 11 to 8. And also, if you've been paying attention, you know by now that you can also grab some grub at their Ghost Kitchen location, which is at 7215 South Power Road in Queen Creek at Bar Vigneto. So all you got to do there is you go online to thespaghettishack.com, click the process to start ordering online. It'll give you the option whether to pick the food up at the Tempe location or that Queen Creek location. So you order your grub, but you go and grab it out there in Queen Creek. So if you're out that way, go ahead and do that. Also, with the holiday approaching, if you got family in town, holiday parties, whatever the case may be, they have some catering options as well. So check out their social media or their website for details about that. That's a great way to fill all the bellies this holiday season. Get them all warm and fuzzy with some Spaghetti Shack. So you can find them on Facebook at The Spaghetti Shack. Follow them at Spaghetti_Shack on Twitter and on Instagram at The Spaghetti Shack to keep up with all the good stuff they've got going on. And once again, to view their menus, hours, and to order online, visit their website at thespaghettishack.com. The Spaghetti Shack, takeout for the pasta-loving people. And as always, a huge thank you to our good friends at Sun Devil Family Charities, a 501c3 nonprofit organization created primarily for the purpose of raising funds to provide financial assistance to Arizona State University alumni, students, staff, and immediate family members adversely affected by medical issues. Monetary donations are always appreciated, and they support those in need due to unexpected medical conditions. Sun Devil Family Charities also has volunteer and sponsorship opportunities available that you can learn about on their website. So for all the ways that you can support Sun Devil Family Charities, go ahead and check them out online at sundevilfamily.org.
And once you're done in supporting our amazing sponsors, make sure to drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Joe and I will be back next week as we talk about the early signing day and air some grievances during a Sun Devil Festivus.